Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to everyone. Looks like there's still some joining and logging in, but welcome to this 19th episode of the Insights Live panel discussions with Space Store. Very excited to have a conversation today with our panel, and would like to thank everyone who's joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to join Space Store and to go with us on this journey as we continue to explore the evolution, the evolving workplace, and looking into what the post-COVID workplace is going to look like. And I'm looking forward to a great discussion today. I think we found every webinar to be both invigorating but also a great learning opportunity. My name's Alex Harvey. I'm VP Sales with Space Store, and looking forward to discussing our topic for today, which is the workplace in 2021. Reimagine, reconfigure, repopulate. So before we introduce our panel to you, I'd love to invite everyone to use the Q&A box. Any questions, any comments, any insights that you feel we should be hearing about, or anything that you're finding is a challenge with projects and clients or your own workspace. We'll certainly be glad to get the insights from our panelists. So we have a fantastic lineup of panelists today. Big welcome to our panelists, and thanks to them for joining us. Really appreciate both their time and also the insights and experience they bring to the conversation. So without further ado, perhaps we could get each of our panelists to introduce themselves. Over to you, Jesper.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. Thanks for having me. I'm also very much looking forward to the next hour or so. So in short, my name is Jesper Ambrosius. I head up what we call the Lego Workplace Experience team, unsurprisingly at the Lego Group. And before I had this, I got the role that I have now. I work with Lego strategy. So basically what we do in the Lego Workplace Experience team is kind of like end-to-end in terms of workplaces. So we develop the workplace concepts, we deliver the projects, and in the bigger offices, we also operate the workplaces. So, and maybe just to add to that, before I give the word to the next one, is to say that the things that I'm also really excited about and really involved in at Lego right now is really to figure out how do we create a global flexible workplace policy, which is probably needed due to COVID and due to changed habits. We're also very much looking into, how is how, as we also will be discussing today, how is the workplace of the future going to look like? What will be the purpose of the office? And then lastly, and related to the second point, really for us to figure out, and very specifically at Lego, we have an idea and an ambition to become a more playful workplace. So those are kind of like the three, I think, more exciting topics that I'm dealing with right now.
That's great. Thanks, Jesper. And we're certainly looking forward to hearing your views and thoughts. Move on to yourself, Christina. Christina Cooper's with Knotel in New York. You could give us a brief introduction to yourself.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here as well. So I'm Christina. I'm the head of workplace strategy and design at Knotel. A little background, I'm a licensed interior designer. I worked at Gensler for quite a bit of time, and that's where I kind of made my transition from interior design for workplace into workplace strategy. I'm particularly passionate about employee experience, work experience, which are all the things that I work on at Knotel. So I actually currently am sitting on a small team at Knotel that's really focused on bringing our products and services to people beyond just our Knotel workspaces. So we've done a lot of flexible lease terms in our own space, but also now our focus on how do we bring these design products and services to anybody, whether they're in their own space or in ours.
That's great. Thanks, Christina. Excited to have you with us today. And then over to you, Vincent. So Vincent is with Unispace also in New York.
Thank you for having me, and hi everyone. I'm very excited for this discussion. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting conversation with this topic. I was trained in practice architecture for over 20 years now, and for the past 15 years, really focusing on technology integration and digital transformation organizations. And I'm an avid futurist with keen interest in genomics and evolution theories, which kind of lead to what I'm currently working on today as a principal at Unispace. And for those of you who don't know, Unispace is a global design built firm with in-house strategy and project delivery team. We have 46 studios across 25 countries around the world. And as a global principal at Unispace, I am responsible for design technology integration and implementation. I'm working closely with global leadership team. We're currently working towards a total global transformation, digital transformation, and developed industry's first data-driven design automation tool, which uses predictive analytics to plan, automate commercial interior fit out. Combining with client data as well as predictive analytics data, and provide direction and strategic leadership to the business and establishing methodologies for best practice and design technology integration and BIM integration as well.
Cool, good. Thanks, Vincent. I think we've got a fantastic blend of different of insights and perspectives to the conversation. Russell, you can introduce yourself. So Russell Kingston's also co-moderating with me.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be on and included. So I'm Russell Kingston, and I'm the Managing Director for the US side of the Space Store business. Very excited about this topic. It's one that's of great interest, particularly as we're, after such an interesting period this year, a lot of the reference points have been taken away, which means we have a great opportunity to build things back different. So very interested to hear what comes out.
Good, thanks, Russell. So anyone who's just joined us in the last few minutes, welcome to this 19th Insights Live panel discussion, where we're looking at the discussion around the workplace in 2021. Reimagine, reconfigure, and repopulate is our title. And I guess to give that a bit of context before we jump right into the discussion, I think what we've seen in the last few panel discussions is a lot of thoughts coming in, a lot of questions coming in around experimenting with the use and the configuration of workplace and workspaces to enable and support the future needs of the workforce. We've also had quite a few questions come in around the subject of digital tools to enable a better design process. So really what we're looking at is Reimagine, which is the kind of designing and experimenting with the workplace. And then reconfigure, which is as we build or reconstruct and experiment with the workplace. And then finally repopulate. So that's when, you know, your team are walking back into the office, returning to the office. And again, we see experimentation being discussed at that point as well. So I think I'm certainly seeing a consensus that how we use the workplace has and is going to continue to change. But I think an interesting question to discuss will be, has the role and purpose of our workplaces changed? So we've got this blend of experience and perspectives today from Jesper and Christina and Vincent. So we've talked about a playful workplace with Lego, employee experience, Christina's passion, and the digital design transformation that Vincent's bringing to the subject. So I guess what would be really interesting to hear from each of the panelists, and maybe at the same time we're going to launch a poll to the audience, is what phase do you see your own organization at right now? Reimagine, reconfigure, repopulate, and also while we're discussing that, what do you see the real purpose of your workplace, your offices being for your people as we go into 2021? So Jesper, do you want to kick off with your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's a big it's a big question, and a few questions in there as well. But let's start with where I believe we are in when you think about reimagine, reconfiguring, and repopulating. I think, especially when it comes to reimagining, we are of course right now thinking about, you know, not only how is the workplace going to look like in the future, but also how is how is remote working going to look like? How can you combine the two? How can you make it complementary so the two do not, so to say, compete against each other? And in there, of course, there are lots of different topics, and I'm sure we'll get back to some of those. But we're definitely there, and I think we're also at the repopulate. I mean, we have been repopulating the office for quite a while now in different phases, and when it comes to repopulating, I think, you know, it's important how, or it's interesting how safety is suddenly on everybody's mind again, right? It's not, when you talk about the workplace experience, safety is kind of like seen as, of course, you know, of course offices are safe. We don't even ask the question. It's just you know, we see it as a given. It's maybe not a given anymore. So that's something we've really focused on in the repopulating phase. So when it comes to that, I think I think we're quite far in the reimagining part, also in the repopulating. I mean, we've also already got quite a bit of learning out of it. And I think also we've done a lot to get good data from our own, my colleagues at Lego, and to figure out, you know, what is the office actually good at, and what motivates them. Why would they like to come back? You know, what's also good with being with working from home or remotely. And that's maybe to the second question. So the reconfiguring part, we're still kind of like waiting a bit on that to see, you know, we're not out of space in any way, so we don't have to do it right now, and we're still waiting a bit to see where all this lands. But in terms of reimagining and repopulating, I think we're fairly far. When it comes to the purpose, then that's very interesting, and I think at least what we've seen is that there seems to be the workplace, the Lego workplace for us seems to be a place where people like to be for the social benefits, for the impromptu you know, discussions, for the workshops, also for some kinds of meetings, especially around maybe creative thinking meetings. Whereas working remotely, and particularly, of course, from home, it's more about, you could say, virtual meetings. It's about the ability to concentrate also for a prolonged period of time. And if we could somehow combine that, right, in some kind of flexible working policy, that would be really interesting. And I do also think, and that's back to also what Russell was alluding to earlier, you know, we've kind of like reset a lot now. And now when the office is not the default option anymore, how can we actually bring people back to the office? What's needed there? And do we have enough information to really understand what we need to do with the offices to get people back? And my answer would be no. I don't think we have enough data on that. So that's also what we're trying to get out of the organization right now. So yeah, definitely a different purpose. And in our particular, you know, maybe coming back to what I also said in the beginning, for us, we believe part of the answer of the purpose of our workplace in the future will be about a playful workplace. So that's maybe I can come back to that later. I want to give the word now to Vincent or Christina, but that's probably our answer to the purpose of the future Lego office.
That's great. Some fantastic thoughts there, and we'll definitely come back to that. How about for yourself, Christina? How kind of two-part question there. So where are you in those three-stage process? And I think, as we were briefly discussing yesterday, we're also wondering whether that process is not a linear process, it's actually a circular process. But give us your thoughts around that.
Yeah, sure. I think similar to Jesper, we're kind of in between the reconfigure and repopulate. But for the Reimagine side of it, you know, we did do a good amount of employee research, surveys, data capturing, and really made sure to keep doing it through the last, I mean, I guess this has been over almost a year at this point, but I guess you could say like 9 months, because things change for people too. Like at the beginning, some people were like maybe really enjoying working from home and others were struggling, and then people got into a groove and now they like it, and other people are like, get me back into the office. So I think you've really seen like a roller coaster of reaction to working from home. So we did a lot of data capturing and really tried to figure out, you know, of course, health and safety was a big concern, but also what are the experiential side of things that people are really missing, that they're not in the office, and what, if they could be in the office safely, what would that be? So we really, you know, used a lot of that data to reimagine what our space looked like. And we actually had moved, I was saying yesterday, Knotel really practices what we preach, and we move space quite a bit. but we actually were kind of at a clean slate and moving into a new space, which kind of was happening before COVID, but now, then we really were. So it was all really new. We weren't coming back to an office that anybody knew. So it was a blank slate for us to start. And we were able to partner with a company actually called SpaceMate, who helped us run predictive analytics from our data capture to measure things like how often would people run into each other for health and safety purposes, but also to measure things around experience. Whether like where our brand was going to show through and what kind of cultural moments we cared about. And even if those things weren't things we were going to start day one, knowing that not a lot of people were going to be there, they were important for us to bring into the office because it's part of the future in our office culture. So I think we're in between Reconfigure and Repopulate. But part of the Reconfigure is also how are we setting up to measure how this is working. And I think that goes to the kind of the cyclical question of, we can make assumptions and predictions and set up the office in a certain way, but we really need to measure that and know how it's working. So whether that's through sensors, IT data, even just our booking software, now we're all sharing desks at this point. So it's kind of a different approach than maybe we were used to. So there's a lot of setup in that. So I think we're kind of focused on that right now. And we have people in and out of the office a bit, but we're gearing up for when more people come back, how are we going to manage that and then actually be able to respond through, furniture solutions or design changes and really be responsive as needs and requirements change, and we can measure that.
That's great. Thanks, Christina. There's a question just come in just before we move over to Vincent. Lacey asking, what was the name of the company you brought in to collect the data? Was it SpaceMate?
SpaceMate, yep.
Perfect. Thanks, Christina. So, Vincent, glad your thoughts. Where are Unispace in that cycle, and what are you seeing in terms of the purpose of the workplace?
Well, as a global design build professional service provider, we have been reimagining workspace. That's kind of core of our business. We have been reimagining the workspace not only for ourselves, but also for our clients. So, from the technology perspective, we've always advocated moving all your data to the cloud. Okay, so we've done that starting 3 years ago. So this pandemic really haven't affected our work as much as some of our clients. And in terms of reconfiguring, and I think I shared something very similar to Jesper and Christina. We are in a phase of reconfiguring the workspace. Safety is definitely a big concern. And we're planning to repopulate. In fact, I think a lot of our employees kind of, enjoy the ability to work remotely. And because of our infrastructure, we are able to work remotely. But as Jesper had pointed out, there are times where, we want to be able to meet face to face. We want to be able to, have meetings in the same space. So those are the aspects that we are, we kind of all share. So yeah, very similar to both panelists. We are in between Reconfigure and Repopulate. And actually, one of the things that I want to mention is, data-driven design automation definitely helps. Using predictive analytics and combining with artificial intelligence. We've actually developed a tool that actually can help with that. But also to visualize, how do you visualize what your new space is going to look like in a virtual environment? So we're also combining that with virtual reality. Not only are we doing that for ourselves, but we're also helping our clients as well. So that, looking, planning, reconfiguring, and showing how the space is going to look like. In fact, one of our clients have asked us to create a virtual environment, so to help some of the change management. Be able to, they want to be able to post that VR environment on their internal website, so that their employees can look at what the space could look like before they re-enter.
Thanks, Vincent. That's excellent. It's very interesting to hear where everyone's at. And as you alluded to, Alex, I think this idea of the fact that it's actually a circular process rather than something linear. We get through it, things change, we try things out. We're seeing, with many of our clients, we're seeing a lot more experimentation going on. And I think that's really exciting, seeing where people are prepared to just try things and experiment and fail a bit more than they would have done perhaps before. We've just got the results of the poll in now. So we've got 50% in the Reimagine phase, 25% in the Reconfigure, and 25% in the Repopulate. So most people still in that Reimagine phase, which is, I guess, what we expected at this stage, as we're waiting to see how things land, how they pan out. Very interested to hear a bit more from you, Jesper, as to how that's working out for you in that Reimagine phase. I think I mentioned to you before this session, but I'm very interested in the whole philosophy around Lego and the fact that it's such a tactile thing and how that comes into your playful office. Just tell us a bit more about that and how it's coming into your reimagining.
Yeah, and it's for us, it's such an important point, of course, as well, that the Lego is a physical product, so that you can actually, that you can touch and play with, right? So that's why also the office and the workplace is such a good place for actually get that experience as employees as well. It's much more difficult to, actually impossible to get virtually, of course. You need something else there. So it is true. We're also, in the way we design our offices, we want to have that tactile feeling in there, and so we want to so the design, of course, and is very important for us. But what we're also working on, but that is still a work in progress, and something that that will take quite a while for sure. That is that we see, in many ways, we see our office as kind of like a driver of culture, right? So, if you're a bit categorical, you can see an office space either as kind of like driver of efficiency gains or as a driver of culture. And for us, we're, our pendulum is definitely more towards the culture part. And so what we're trying to do right now is to figure out, we won't be able to create the experience of building with Lego, because we're not building with Lego most of us are not, unfortunately. But we want to recreate the feeling of doing so, right? So the feeling of so what are the feelings, the characteristics of playing? If we can recreate those feelings in the workplace as being part of your work, we believe that it will be a massive benefit for us in terms of motivation, satisfaction, at some point also, of course, in terms of employer brand and stuff like that. So also because it, it creates a kind of consistency in the values, right, all the way through from the product and to the employee experience. So that's what we're working on very much right now, and as you say, part of that is, of course, also to get the bricks in that experience in a way. So, but it's not easy. But I think we will. I think we'll get there.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I love the way you've got that kind of end-to-end connection you're looking at there, right from the front to the back end, as it were. And then just coming back to you, Vincent, on your points there about what you're doing with VR. Do you see that by using VR and perhaps doing things digitally as you plan, are you seeing that people are prepared to perhaps experiment more? You can challenge mindsets, people look at things with more open mind because it's they feel safer doing it digitally first. How's that playing out for you?
Yeah, I think especially with this pandemic, I'm seeing a rise in the demand for virtual reality, and because clients can't access job sites, or want to access the job site. So in any given project, and we've been doing this for over 3 years now, and this is a perfect platform to really test out now. Before any project, instead of looking at outdated drawings or go back into the field to do field measurements, we do a 3D scan. So starting with that, we are able to generate accurate existing condition data. That saves a lot of time. And with that, we generate a virtual reality model, a BIM. So combining the actual 3D capture and the design BIM model, we are able to have conversations with clients to look at the existing condition and look at the design proposal in a virtual environment. We don't have to go to the field anymore. So that really helped. And when the project is in construction, and we have several of those projects in construction right now, we also use VR to capture and document construction progress, and also be able to have conversations with the client, give client updates, compare the design model now to the construction process. So all that is being done virtually, and it's extremely helpful, and it's a lot safer to rather than going into the field and meeting face to face. As much as
jump in your train of thought there, Vincent. We've got a couple of questions coming which kind of relate to what you're saying there. So Chris Radcliffe's asking about, just to explain a bit more what you mean by VR, is that headsets and photorealistic walkthroughs. And then Mercedes Vonk is asking about the process of change management. And I know you mentioned that you're able to use some of the video walkthroughs to help with the change management process, particularly when we're talking about the repopulating phase. Could you just give us a few thoughts around that?
Yes, sure. So when we're talking about VR, we're not talking about the goggles. Those are nice and gimmicky for perfect for gamers, but not in the real world. Okay, I find it very silly for people to be walking around with goggles and bumping into walls. What we mean by that is there are several types of virtual reality. There is web VR. Which basically provides a virtual reality environment that you can view on a screen. Okay, for those who likes to wear a goggle, they could also wear a goggle. Same difference. But we're talking about real-time VR, a VR environment that's tied back into our BIM process that allows the client to see what we're designing, what the design proposal is. So that's one part of VR. The other one is reality capturing. We're using 3D scanners to scan the space, and that with that, there's two types of 3D scans that we do for our clients. One is laser. That laser scan will provide us with accurate existing condition data, and the other one is using photogrammetry. And what that does is it captures real-time information. So we use that for construction, as well as other vertical process. So for construction, we capture on a weekly basis what the construction progress is, and that is hosted on a web access via web. So the client, we share the link with the client, so they can see what the construction site looks like on a weekly basis and on a regular basis. And the other part is change management. So for some of our clients, they want to use the VR, right? And this is now the design VR, right? Using our design, our BIM, we are able to create web VR or real-time VR, depending on what the client's flavor is. And they want to post on the website, and they want to superimpose training videos, documentation, specs. Here's what your new office is going to look like. They can actually walk through the space in a virtual environment. They can visit their new workstation. There would be information about the new workstation, how to operate, voiceovers, whatever it is that they need. And that's something that we've been helping with some of our clients with.
Thanks, Vincent. That's very interesting. It's fascinating to see how some of these changes are being accelerated with the situation we're in now. Just to pivot on from that slightly, Christina, I just wanted to come back to this kind of circular process, because Knotel, as you said, your flexibility is very much what you're about. How far do you think we're going to end up going on this journey of moving to a more flexible workspace? Is it going to be something that we might change around every year, or is it coming right down to something where the users of the space can kind of edit it almost daily? Where do you think the landing point might be there?
Yeah, I think it's a blend of probably all of those things a little bit, and different components being a different amount of flexible, if you will. I think like for Knotel specifically, we were always flexible in terms of, obviously in lease terms, but also for people to grow or shrink on our platform. So we had to think about space and flexibility in a kind of between tenants mindset. So, once one tenant or customer was going to move out, someone else was moving in, and we wanted to make sure that space was going to work for them. But, I think to take that a step further, it's how, while someone's in the space or in an office, is it going to respond? And I think when you think about measuring data and actually capturing how space is being used, some changes can be simple. You can have two different open settings, and one has a whiteboard and one has a monitor, and you find everybody's always using the whiteboard. That's like a pretty easy swap, and a quick response, and something, even if things are mobile, people can move them around, and kind of hack the space themselves. So I think there's like ways to, in scale, you have, flexibility that can be changed within minutes, and then you can kind of go to the hours or the days mindset. So, the longer changes, but still flexible, are like changing around demountable wall systems or things like that, that still help you maintain flexibility if the infrastructure is all set up to do it, but take a little bit more time. But you're still not talking about, the months it would take to build a space out from scratch, which, is the way traditionally office was built.
So just
maybe we'll build it all out of Legos. I mean, I don't know.
That would be fun.
Let's do that at this point. Just taking on some of your points there around kind of user feedback, data versus kind of the anecdotal, the kind of the individual conversations, and then how that drives changes or as you say, hacks to the workspace. What's your view of that, Jesper? Is that something that Lego do already, or is it something you're thinking about?
Yeah, for sure. And I think related to what Christina is saying, I think it not only depends on the furniture. Some is fairly easy to make hackable, but some is not. But part of it is not. But I also do think that kind of, you could say, the hackability or whatever you want to call it, should support the way that people work. So I think some departments are just work differently, right? And therefore you need to also set up the configuration in a different way. So as an example, our digital department is really working, of course, very, with an agile philosophy. And for them, it makes a lot of sense to have a, hackable office space, whereas for others, it doesn't, right? So it's, so I think it's also related to how people work, for sure. And then when it comes to the data and how we use it at Lego, I mean, I was actually surprised when I started in this role almost 2 years ago, that we had very little data on our employees, on the people. And I'm not sure if that goes for other companies as well. I suspect it might well do, but for us, it was absolutely crucial to understand, what do people actually, what motivates them, what is it that what create the good workplace experience, and what are the differences also, the differences in depending on location, differences depending on all kinds of different factors, right? So we're getting wiser here, which is also super important, because if we want to create a workplace, and now we talk about the Lego workplace, and not, you can say there will also be a workplace probably at home if people will be working much more from home or remotely in general. But the Lego workplace, if we are to repurpose that, then we need to understand, how people work and what motivates them and what's important for them. Otherwise, we'll just be refitting an office because, with our ideas of how it should look like, how it should look like, or how it could look like. And that's not the way we would like it to be done. We would like it to be created bottom up. So it helps us enormously in this thinking. And
just picking up on your point, I've just started to see a few kind kind of titles and that kind of thing. We've obviously had head of HR and head of workplace strategy and head of workplace. Are you now seeing a head of remote workplace or head of remote working becoming a potential role or a potential role within the workplace strategy team?
I mean, it could be, and we actually do not know. I don't know where it lands. Also at Lego, I mean, will it be us? I mean, are we, basically, we've changed our scope from being Lego Workplace Experience only thinking about the offices to now also be thinking about the experience of working from home. I think the answer is probably yes. We'll have to do that. Whether we are the best suited team for that, I don't know yet, because we're also, for us, the virtual collaboration to the extent that we're seeing now is also new. Of course, we've been working remotely at Lego, at least in most of our offices for years. So it wasn't that big a change for us, but the amount of remote working now, of course, is very different. And how to create that good workplace experience online is still something that we are, struggling a bit with. So, but yeah. So I don't know where it will end. Well, it will end. It might land on my table, but for now, it's unconcluded.
What are you seeing, Christina, from an employee experience perspective? Head of remote workplace, is that a new role that we're going to see?
I mean, I definitely think so. I think I have already started to see a little bit about that. And, it is interesting, I think, to Jesper's point, like, who's the best suited for that? It will be really interesting because there's so much about workplace strategy in the physical world that should translate into the virtual. But that's also kind of a different skill set too. So I think it'll be really interesting. And it's really a lot of collaboration, I'd also say, with people teams. Like, I think, in my past, I've worked with, when you're working with the clients, you can work with the CFO or you could work with like the head of HR, I'd say. And now I'm seeing a lot more like heads of people or heads of HR who are really involved in the workplace design and experience and the conversations, like right from the beginning, where I think maybe those conversations were really driven by more financial, leadership. So I think it's really a collaboration across teams and really connecting things that were maybe disconnected in the past a lot earlier to make the decision about the workplace.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, that's very interesting. I want to just come across to Vincent now. Just before I do that, just to remind everyone, please be free to put in questions you've got in the Q&A box, and we'll try and bring them in and get some answers. But Vincent, I'm interested to hear from your perspective on this one. And what are the biggest changes you're seeing coming through in this as you do those deep dives with clients and as you take them through the Reimagine process from a Unispace point of view?
So let's talk about Reimagine. I just want to go back to a point because I think it's important to emphasize that in terms of reimagining, we have been, a lot of clients as well as our own organization, the activity-based work style, ABW, has been around for years. And we actually have created a new work style called Propeller. It's a new platform that we've been educating our clients around. And that revolves around having kit of parts. So when we're talking about hackable space, that is precisely what Propeller is all about. It's designing kit of parts. And that actually works really well with our design automation process as well. We're helping clients redefine their workspace using kit of parts so they can quickly reconfigure their space as the business evolve and transform, as the workforce transform. They can grow, shrink certain departments, and mainly, and instead of building a lot of hard walls, we could use furniture system to configure the space. So it kind of, Propeller kind of combines your Reimagine, Reconfigure, and Repopulate. So it really helps.
Yeah. So what are the biggest questions that are coming up for your clients as they go through that journey? How's that changing things for them compared to? Some clients are really attracted. It's very attractive when we propose the Propeller concept for them. But there are clients who are still
they still prefer cellular space. So sometimes there's going to be a little bit of hybrid, but we are trying to demonstrate the value and the benefit of a more agile, more progressive way of designing and reconfiguring their space.
Thanks, no, that's good.
Interested to see how the kind of blend of that, the data and the numbers, if you like, that feedback from the workplace versus the verbal cues, or maybe the one-to-one conversations, or the kind of verbal feedback. How do you get a balance between blending those two? Because I think the point of a workplace is about the people, isn't it? Ultimately, it's about creating a better experience for the individual as they come to that space. What's your view on that, Jesper?
Well, yeah, my view is that it's important to you could say get data and gather data and use it from a variety of methodologies, right? And of course, you can do the surveys, you can do the interviews, but you should also do, at least that's what we're trying to do now, different kinds of testing, experimentation, RCTs, to really figure out what are the ups and downs here. And because it's my experience, at least at Lego, that we do not have a lot of like stable knowledge around the workplace. So basically, everybody's opinion is has equal weight, because I think we lack some let's just call it evidence for some for some solutions and some ways of working. And then I think it's as you also said, Alex, that one thing is also getting the hard data in, and you can do that via, of course, you can say surveys and stuff like that, but you can also get it from IoT and really put more technology into the workplace. I do think, though, that in the end you still have to relate to somehow the change management process afterwards. So let's, as an example, with the technology, you might be able to discover that people are not using meeting rooms efficiently, so to say, right? So four-person meeting room might only be used by one or two person most of the times, and that's that's good insight, of course, and you can use technology to get that. But how do you change it? And there are so of course you can put up signs, or you can throw people out. But if that's not the way you actually want to work, if that's not the kind of like the part of the culture of your work, then how do you then do it? And I think that's probably an even more difficult task to solve, really. How do you make people behave in a way that supports the values and the way you want to work, when people basically go against the kind of like the ground rules or the rules of engagement, or whatever you want to call it? So that's something at least we try also to combine with. So we not just have the data, but we also very purposefully try to, with that people touch, human touch, try to change behavior afterwards.
That's very interesting. I'll just back to this data point. It links on with a question we've had in from John Barron, asking about what do we really think the long-term effect of home working might be, or remote working, given that the measurements out of trying to do schoolwork at home have resulted in grades being down. Is that going to result in less productivity over the long term? Interested in your views on that one, Christina?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. It's also hard to even measure. But I do think, it's an interesting time, because the stats and things that we're seeing now, even if you're talking about schools and work and performance, are also weighing on a lot of other things, like a global pandemic, people have their kids home all the time. Like, there's a lot of other things that, if things were to go back to semi-normalcy, maybe wouldn't be the same distractions or weight on people. So there's not really an answer. I mean, I don't have an answer, I guess. But I do think this opens our eyes to a lot of things to test out and really be out there, just, moving into a future of work that I think is where a lot of us were headed. It's sped up a lot because of everybody being forced to work from home. So, I don't think the answer is always working from home is the best or not. But these are really like good experiments for us to continue once things kind of go back or resume to a more normal, way of working or life.
I think that's good, and it's we often forget, don't we? It feels like we've been in this situation for a long time, and in some senses we have, but in another way, it's actually a very short period. 9 months in the scheme of things is, in the evolution of workspace, is not that long. So it's I think we've got a way to go. It's interesting. One of the questions that come in, I wondered if you could help us on, Vincent, and that is Jessica asking about workspace and the vision for keeping it healthy and clean and sanitary. What inventions and interesting ideas are we seeing coming forward in that arena? You got anything you can share for us there?
What I'm seeing is, well, let's talk about Unispace. So in the construction site, every site we have temperature, monitors, right? So for safety, every time a staff comes in, they have to get the temperature scanned, and there is a safety supervisor on site at any given time, making sure that they're following protocols, wearing protective gears, etc. So that's that in terms of helping our corporate interior clients. A lot of them are already following a lot of procedures in terms of installing hand sanitizing stations, messaging and posters all across, all along the office space, letting people know that they need to practice safety precautions, social distancing. I'm not seeing a whole lot of groundbreaking technology besides monitors and temperature thermometers, and yeah.
I think one thing I want to add on to that is just, part of its behaviors that I think are going to change a bit. When you talk about a healthy workplace, I think people, in the past were more afraid to take a sick day or be home sick. And I mean, I know like all the places I've worked, people come into the office sick because, they either don't want to use their vacation time or whatever it might be. And I think that there'll be a different attitude towards that in the future. At least I hope so, that people take it more seriously when they're sick. So, whether you're talking about COVID or the flu or anything, people taking more precautions to stay well themselves and also keep other people well, so.
I think that's interesting. Your point there about the behaviours and linking that back to what Jesper was saying, because with the 4-person meeting room, we need to be thoughtfully designing space, don't we, so that it drives the right behaviour without forcing it. And finding out how that fits is, we don't want to be in a world where we've got yellow sticky tape and screens everywhere and arrows telling us which way we can walk forever. We need to build it in so that it's instinctive, don't we?
Russell, just go back to your, the keyword evolutionary, right? So, I study evolution theories, and I sort of equate this pandemic in the evolutionary concept as a bottleneck effect, right? Not so much in a biological sense, but in a technology and business transformation sense. When you have a natural disaster, that bottleneck effect causes a certain type of mutation and forces the human population to kind of evolve at a rapid pace. And this is precisely what's happening in the real world with this pandemic. It's forcing us to evolve at a rapid pace, reimagining and rethinking, reconfiguring the spaces that we work and live in, and completely transforming our lifestyle. I think a lot of employers are starting to understand that, hey, look, with the technology, people can work remotely. And going back to one of the comment earlier about remote school, I think it's a change of behavior. I have an 8-year-old. He's actually much more effective now that he's doing half remote and half going to the class. He's learning other activities. So it's about behavior. It's about social change, more or less.
maybe if I can add to that also, Vincent, what you're saying here, and Christina said it earlier, I think before we can even begin talking about whether productivity will go up or down or whatever will happen to that, let's discuss productivity, as Christina was also saying. You know, how do we even measure it, right? I mean, the examples of school grades, maybe grades are not the best measure of school productivity. It might be lots of other factors, right? And the same goes with the productivity at work, and especially you could say knowledge worker productivity. It might not be the top line that's the best predictor of productivity, you know. And I think one more, you know, an easier proxy, so to say, would probably be just to ask the different bosses, you know, how people, are they motivated? Do they deliver what they usually do deliver, what you expect them to deliver? And the boss also has to be much better at actually directing and directing the output instead of the input, because now we can't see people anymore. So I think it's much more interesting to discuss those things, the trust, the good leadership, rather than the endless discussions about productivity we have no clue about anyway. We have no idea of causality in it, and we're all over the place here because it's such a complex system, the workplace, right? So yeah, so that was just one of my pet peeves I wanted to put in there. Now we're at it.
I love your point on education, because yeah, you might argue that if a student came out, you know, through this COVID period, if a student came out of their 6th grade with the ability to collaborate digitally, the ability to work remotely, you know, they're probably better suited for the workplace than if they came out with a load of straight A's from their exams. Great point. And there's a slight change of tack from some of the questions coming in. So we're getting a few questions around the whole conversation on MEP. So HEPA filters has come up a few times in the Q&A box. Be interested in any of you actually, whether you've seen the discussion around increased air filtration. There's a question around the 5-layer filtration with UV lights being more localized within the user's workspace. Is that something that you're seeing popping up, Christina, or anyone else in the workspaces you're involved with?
I mean, I think from a HVAC standpoint, the filters and things like that are, you know, standard into any of our spaces that we're opening, and people are obviously asking those questions and looking for that. As far as like the UV lights or anything beyond that, to be honest, I haven't seen a ton, but I'm also not the closest to that in my role either. But I think like the standard is definitely around the HVAC side of it, from what I've seen.
Definitely. And how about for yourself, Vincent or Jesper? Is that something that's a drive for you guys?
Yeah, I think this question would be better suited for some of our construction management team as well as our design teams. So I don't really have much to add to that one.
Same here.
Good. Okay. Well, we'll keep moving. We're coming into our last 4 or 5 minutes. So again, thanks everyone who's joining us. This is actually the last of our Insights live discussions in 2020, and what a year it's been. We're certainly looking forward to hearing more and seeing you guys all again in 2021. We're hoping there's going to be a brighter future, particularly with the vaccines now starting to be available globally. So just down to our last few minutes, maybe get some kind of wrapping up thoughts from the 3 panelists. And at the same time, we've also got a question come in around the generational impacts on different employees. So Mercedes is asking about the latest data, which seems to be showing that the younger generations are suffering the most due to COVID. So glad of anyone's thoughts on that, and any kind of final wrapping up thoughts as we come into the last minute or two.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question about generations. I think the points that Jesper brought up before too around leadership and organization structure, all these things are really related to how we measure performance and productivity. And I think to go back to kind of the point around partnership with HR teams or people teams are, I think, you know, even more important, and the overlap between workplace design, virtual workplace design, all these things are really connected to org structure, leadership, like how teams are developing their goals and objectives, and it's measured differently for everybody. So I think it's really just a lot of collaboration with different teams who've been focused on one thing, really working together to deliver a good workplace experience.
No, I absolutely agree with with Christina here, and I think what can to mitigate the risk there, I think is more planning from. So if we are working more remotely in the future, which looks very likely for most companies, then I think it's important as a manager to make sure that you actually plan for when you are in the office together as a team and when you're apart. So I think we do not do that today. I think many do not do it to the extent that I think we will see going forward. As an example, in my team, we go in every Wednesday. So, and we're together there as a team. The other day is really up to people whether they want to come in or whether they want to work from home or elsewhere. So I think that part is very important, because I still think that we cannot replicate that in any way to the same extent virtually. So I think there'll be more planning into that. And I've even heard some in Silicon Valley beginning to think about, maybe you meet every 6th week or so, right? And then you're physically together 4 or 5 days, and then you split again, and you meet 6 weeks later. And so, yeah, there'll be many models, I think, but it's super important to make sure that especially the young generation also gets, feel part of the community and the workplace.
Yes, but do you have any closing thoughts for us, Vincent?
Well, as a futurist, I think what I would recommend to everyone or all of our clients is that we need to look at this as an opportunity to reimagine social and cultural transformation and see how to reimagine our workspace, and also invest in technology infrastructure that's going to allow them to have that cultural change, to support that social change, and looking forward to a new normal.
Thanks, Vincent, and it's great to have everyone on, and a big thanks to our panelists for their insights around technology acceleration and the importance of that physical space, and how flexibility is going to become an ever bigger part. And we'll be in touch as we go into 2021 with the next part of our series. And please give us feedback on the link which was sent around in the chat there on the type form for what you'd like to see and how we can add more value. But for today, thank you and good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.